Yo, what's good YouTube? My name is JY Sharif, and today I have a little discussion video. We have Burst of Destiny coming out next week, and with that we have the new boss monster, Destiny hero Destroy Phoenix Enforcer, making his debut to the TCG format. And with that, I just wanted to do a little breakdown, just comparing the Dragoons to Enforcer, like the pros and cons of each engine, and at the end I'll give you like my personal opinion on which one I think is better. And I'll be coming mainly from a perspective of a Phantom Knight player. That's the deck I've been playing recently. Like, I've been getting back into the game and playing the Phantom Knight deck with the Red Eyes Dark Dragoon as one of the main boss monsters. So yeah, let's jump right in. So let's start with just looking at the boss monsters themselves. So we have Red Eyes Dark Dragoon here. So it has a really good protection effect, so it can't be destroyed by card effects. Neither player can target it as well with card effects, so it's really hard to kind of out. And it has an effect during the main phase. You can destroy one monster your opponent controls and inflict damage equal to that monster's original attack. So it has a non-target destruction effect that you can use pretty much twice per turn, because you're always going to be fusion summoning it with the two vanillas, unless you're playing a deck like Virtual World. But primarily most decks are going to be main decking the fusion package to be able to summon it with the two vanillas. And the main effect here is the negation. So once per turn, when a card or effect is activated, you can discard one card, negate the activation if you do destroy that card. And if you do that, this card gains 1,000 attack. So if it negates a card, it bumps up to 4,000, because it already has a base attack of 3,000 with 2,500 defense. And then it has a potential to go up to even 5,000 attack the following turn if you're able to get a second negation in the turn after. So yeah, the attack boost is permanent as well, which is pretty crazy. So now let's have a look at the Destroy Phoenix Enforcer. So this name doesn't really roll off the tongue, does it? Like Destiny hero Phoenix Enforcer, that does, but Destroy Phoenix Enforcer? Damn, yeah. Anyways, so with this guy, he has a blanket effect where it makes all of your opponent's monsters lose 200 attack for each hero card in your graveyard, with most people playing just a small package of just one Celestial, one Dasher, or I've seen some people experimenting with one Denier and Malicious. You're only really going to have two heroes in the grave, so that means your opponent's monsters are losing 400 attack each, which is still pretty good. And unless you're playing heroes where you'll have potentially up to 10 hero monsters in the graveyard after your first or second turn, which can really make a huge difference in terms of attack. And the main effect here is that quick effects, you can destroy both one card you control and one card on the field. And the crazy thing about this effect is that it doesn't target, which has a lot of benefits, which I'll jump into in a little bit when breaking down the benefits of each monster. And then the last effect is when it's destroyed by battle or card effect. You can activate this effect to special summon one Destiny hero monster from your graveyard during the standby phase of the next turn. So similar to how Dragoon can't be targeted or destroyed, this guy he can, but he just comes back every turn. So it's pretty insane. And so those are the boss monsters. Now let's jump into the actual the fusion packages, like the materials and the spells. So we have for the Red Eyes Dark Dragoon, we have the one Red Eyes Fusion, and then we have one copy of Red Eyes Black Dragon, and then one copy of Dark Magician. So the main issue with this package is that you're playing three complete bricks, and if you're playing a 40 card deck and you draw 5 cards, the odds of opening a 3 of, or at least one of a 3 of, is going to be 34%. Just rounding up to the nearest percent. And if you're going second, the odds of drawing at least one of them is going to be 39%. So that's a lot. At least 1/3 of your games, you're going to be seeing one of these 3 cards. So imagine you're playing, in Yu-Gi-Oh! We play matches out of 3. So 1 out of 3 of those games, you're going to be seeing one of these bricks in your hand. And the two vanillas, they're just complete bricks. They're just unusable whatsoever. There's nothing you can do with them in your hand. Whereas the fusion, is like it is a brick and it isn't at the same time. Like there are certain niche situations where if you draw it like going second, it can actually like potentially win you a game. For example, you know, let's say you drew it in combination with the forbidden droplets, and you can negate your opponent's monsters and you can fusion and then potentially just win the game just off the Dragoon alone. But a lot of times when you're going first, just having a Dragoon by itself is not really enough in modern day Yu-Gi-Oh against most, you know, meta decks. If you have the Dragoon with some protection, then yeah, it's okay. And the spell itself is quite vulnerable, you know, to like Ash Blossom, which, you know, if it does get ashed, it does mean that you're not able to do anything else for the rest of the turn. And the spell itself is pretty restrictive in that you can't normal or special summon other monsters a turn you activate this card. So if you are to hard draw this and play it, that is the only thing you're going to be doing for the turn. So it's very, very restrictive. So I do consider the Red Eyes Fusion to be a complete brick in itself as well. So that's the main issue, is that these three are just complete bricks, but you obviously have the payoff of having the Dark Dragoon, which is very, very powerful in itself and quite difficult to out. Now with the hero engine, so you play 3 Fusion Destiny, which is like a pseudo Shadow Fusion. The fact that, you know, it lets you fusion from your deck, and it's a really powerful spell. And the fact that the only restriction here is that once you activate it for the rest of the turn, you can only special summon dark hero monsters. So the restriction is not as bad as the Red Eyes Fusion, because you can at least play your hand into a board and then activate the Fusion Destiny at the end, and then, you know, use your Enforcer to, you know, wreak some havoc and gain advantage over your opponent. So yeah, the spell itself is really good. That's why you play 3 copies. And the fact that you have 3 copies in a deck has a few advantages. So the first thing is with Verte Anaconda. If you draw your one of Red Eyes Fusion, your Verte is dead, so you're not able to use it to summon the Dragoon, which sucks because it means you're only able to use the Fusion that turn. Whereas with Fusion Destiny, there you have a few different options. Even if you draw the Fusion Destiny, you can still, your Verte is still alive. So you have that benefit. And you have the benefit of like having 3 additional, you know, extenders really. So whereas with the Dragoon package, 1/3 of the time you're bricking with one of these cards in your hand. With Fusion Destiny, at least 1/3 of the time you're going to be drawing a pretty good extender, which, you know, allows you to have like one last really powerful push, because you get to summon the Enforcer. The Enforcer is a pretty beefy monster. You get to attack over something, and then you also get to destroy a card as well, and the fact that it comes back the next standby phase. And with Enforcer, he may not have as much attack as the Dragoon, but he does have pretty beefy stats when you think about it. So he has 2500 attack, but the fact he makes your opponent's monsters lose 400 means they need at least 2900 attack to be able to crash with it, or 3000 if they want to get over it. And that's by just destroying it by battle, which isn't really the best or most effective way to get rid of it. And then with the defense, it's got 2100 defense, but again, it makes your opponent's monsters lose 400 attack since you have 2 heroes, which means they need at least 2600 attack points to be able to attack over an Enforcer in defense mode. And again, destroying it by battle isn't the best way to get rid of it. So it is pretty beefy in itself. So even if you forbidden droplets and it's, you know, sitting in defense, at least you still will have a 2100 booty for them to attack over. So yeah, so that's the fusion spell there. And then with the bricks, so with you have Dasher, which has a decent effect in the grave. So the first effect isn't really relevant because it's never really going to be on the field. But the grave effect, one time only, when you draw a monster during the draw phase while this card is in your graveyard, you can reveal that card, special summon it. So, you know, if you're playing a deck like Tri Brigade, for example, if you top deck into one of your tries, you get to just special it for free without using your normal summon, which can be very important in a deck like Tri Brigade, which can only summon, only really have 2 sort of ways of playing. They have their initial normal summon, then they have the Kuraz, and then at least the Dasher lets them, you know, summon another guy without having to discard for Kuraz. And then the second monster is Celestial. Now this card is really, really insane. So the grave effect is while you have no cards in your hand, except the turn this card was sent to the graveyard, you can banish it in 1 Destiny Hero monster from your graveyard and draw 2 cards. So like a pseudo, you know, pot of greed. You know, like You play your first turn, set up a board. Your opponent tries to break that board or whatever, and then your next turn you get to draw for turn, play your hand out, and then, or even if you drew a spell trap, set it right away. Celestial to draw 2 with like no sort of restrictions around that, which is really, really crazy. Like drawing 2 in the grind, it can make a really big difference. And pretty much in modern day Yu-Gi-Oh, after your opponent's after the first turn, that is the grind game. Games don't really last very long. And the first effect actually has a pretty decent application. Like it will never ever come up, but it can do. So when this card declares an attack, you can target one face-up spell your opponent controls, destroy it, and if you do, inflict 500 damage to your opponent. So it can out certain spells. I guess like the one thing I can think of is like the Flunderee's field spell, for example. Worst comes to worst, if you had to summon this guy, you can pop that field spell or maybe pop a continuous spell. But just the fact that it does something in comparison to these two, it really makes the difference. And even worst comes to worst, let's say you're playing Phantom Knights, right? And your hand is a brick. You drew like some improbable hand. You drew Celestial and Shade Brigandine and 3 spells, 3 Forbidden Droplets, right? You bricked. Your worst case, you can just normal summon the Celestial, special the Shade Brigandine, and overlay to make a Redoer or an Evil Swarm Nightmare, which can be the difference between winning and losing a game, or even go further than that. You completely bricked, or you're in a grind game or something, and you're reaching time now. You can set the Celestial and protect your life points. It does something. And if the Celestial help you win, like the fact that it's a playable monster, that you're able to summon it, helps you win at least one game out of 20. That's still the difference between going X3 and topping a YCS or topping a major event. And another interaction as well with the Phantom Knight deck, for example. Let's say you drew two level 3s that you can special summon, so you use them to make your Cherubini, and you Cherubini send Graph, and let's say your Graph gets ashed. In that situation, you can still normal Celestial, and you can make Rusty, and still be able to potentially continue playing from there, or at least set some Fog Blades to be able to counter your opponent, because that's maybe the only play you may have access to at that time. So it does something. Even though it's very minuscule, it does something. And the fact that you only have 2 bricks, so that means in a 40 card deck, if you're drawing 5, in your opening 5, you'll have it's 24% to draw a 2 of, one of a 2 of. So that's still 1 in every 4 games instead of 1 in every 3. So that does make quite a difference in the amount of times you'll be seeing the bricks and drawing an unplayable card. So that's the engines overall. So just the percentages, like the Fusion Destinies are way more favorable. So the Enforcer package is definitely way more favorable than the Dragoon package there. And now with the boss monsters itself. So with Dragoon, it can be quite restrictive on what you can do. So there are a few sort of choke points that it has. So it does negate the activation of a card, which can be really powerful. It means you can negate spells, which spells are like the most powerful cards in this game, and they can generate a lot of pluses. But the problem is that since it negates the activation, it means that they can activate another one. So it just means, like, generally if your opponent draws 2 good spells, for example, if they drew like 2 copies of Triple Tactics Talents, or 2 copies of Shadow Fusion, like 2 copies of like a power spell, or even 2 copies of Fusion Destiny, because that can only be activated once per turn, it means that they're going to be able to at least resolve their spell and potentially out the Dragoons, especially if it's a card like Triple Tactics Talents, which Dragoons is very vulnerable to. So if your Dragoons has to negate a card, your opponent, like I can't even like count how many times this has happened to me. So I'm playing like the Phantom Knights, I summon a Dragoon with my Rusty and like do my little combo, pass to my opponent. My opponent plays his cards and plays a power spell, for example, that I just have to negate. I negate it with Dragoon and discard a card cost, and it resolves. And then they go activate Triple Tactics Talents, take my Dragoons, and they'll just destroy both of my monsters and just attack me for game. Like that is like. Yeah, and it's happened to a lot of people playing Dragoon, where someone has tactics and is able to force a negate. The Dragoon can just be turned against you very easily. So it is very powerful, but it can be quite detrimental if your opponent has tactics. And on top of that, it loses pretty hard to cards like Droplet and Dark Ruler No More. So with Droplet especially, since with the Dragoon you're discarding a card, if your opponent does chain the Droplets to the discard, so it means the Dragoon is negated and you lost that card in your hand, and you also end up losing your initial investment because you invested 2 monsters to make the Verte Anaconda, and yeah, so you're going really minus in that situation, and the Dragoon will go down to 1500, so it'll just be very easily outed, and once it's outed, it's not coming back, it's pretty much gone. Whereas the Enforcer, if your opponent does have a card like Droplets or Dark Ruler No More, your Enforcer, they'll still have to get rid of it by either banishing it or returning it to the extra deck. So, because if it is destroyed by battle or card effects, or by sending it to graveyard, like a card like Zeus, for example, they will have to. It won't be very easy. That they'll have to actually like try to get rid of it outside the traditional ways of destroying by battle or card effects. So, it can be quite difficult to out, but at least it means if your opponent does have one of these power cards, it's not just straight up over for you. And the thing about the Enforcer, it does let you play around cards. There is a lot of options you have. The card is quite versatile. So let's say you're playing Phantom Knights, right? And you have your Appaloosa and your Enforcer, right? Like Appaloosa, Enforcer, and Rusty, for example, right? That's your board. Those 3 monsters. Your opponent goes, okay, I'm going to activate Droplets, pitch 2. What you can do is you can actually chain your Fogblade, since they're very unlikely to discard a trap card, and then you can chain the Enforcer to the Fogblade, and then you can pop itself and pop your Rusty, which means on resolution you only have 1 monster, and it will mean the Droplet will fizzle out, because the Droplets actually has to choose that many effect monsters. So if you can't choose the amount that was sent, so they sent 2 cards and you only have 1 on res, the Droplets will just fizzle out and your Appaloosa will remain, so you still have negates on there. So there is ways to play around cards, similar with Triple Tactics Talents. If they activate Tactics Talents, you can actually chain your Enforcer to destroy itself and destroy another one of your monsters that may be detrimental for your opponent to take away from you, to prevent them from taking your power monsters, so at least they can't take full advantage of the tactics, which can be the difference between winning and losing a game. So the Enforcer is quite versatile in what it does, and the fact that it doesn't target is a really big thing. So let's say I'm playing against a trap deck, and like I activate my Enforcer, and my opponent has 3 or 4 back row or multiple back rows. Now that they potentially are going to have to chain some of those back rows, because they may possibly lose them to the Enforcer, because they don't know what I'm going to destroy, because I don't have to tell them. It doesn't target, it just destroys on the resolution, and I don't even have to tell them what I'm targeting on my field. I just choose on resolution what I'm destroying. So I don't even have to destroy the Enforcer. I can destroy one of my Fog Blades or destroy another card. So let's say I'm playing against Eldritch, and let's say they have like Aquero, for example, and they may have to chain that because they may not be able to resolve the effect to banish a card from my grave. And then if they chain it, I can choose to destroy a different card. So it's different to, for example, if it did target, you would have to target one of the back row blind. At least you have to force your opponent to respond, and that extra bit of information can give you the difference between winning and losing a game as well. For example, Sky Strike, another matchup where let's say you're able to resolve the Enforcer, they may have to chain some of their spells because they may lose them to the Enforcer if they don't use the opportunity to chain those spells and resolve their effects. So that is really good as well. And another really big thing, the most toxic thing right now, in the OCG, everyone is scything each other. It's not very fun. Scythe is a very toxic card. But yeah, the Enforcer works very, very well with Artifact Dagda, and you can just use trigger your Dagda to set a Scythe or set a Lancia, and then use your Enforcer to destroy it on your opponent's turn, and then floodgate your opponent out of the game for that turn. And that is really big, because I really feel like Scythe shouldn't be a thing, but unfortunately it is. So we just have to kind of deal with it. But the fact that it can do this very easily is going to be quite difficult to deal with, and it really adds to like the benefits of playing Enforcer, especially in a deck like Phantom Knights, for example. Now, the one thing as well, so with Enforcer, it may seem like it's like not as strong as Dragoons, like by its effect. and maybe the fact that it doesn't have a protection effect on the field, like people think that it might be easier to out, but the Enforcer is quite hard to out in itself. The fact that it comes back during each standby phase, it means if it does resolve, your opponent will specifically have to banish it from the graveyard, and there's not really many cards that can actually like banish from the graveyard without, you know, for example, you have Call by the Grave, but that's just a one-off. The Phantom Knight deck, you have access to like a rank 4 like number 80 by resolving Break Sword. You can use your 2 level 4s to make this, and you can banish 2 cards from your opponent's grave. So you're able to banish the Celestial and, you know, banish the Enforcer, which can be really crazy in like a mirror match, for example, if you're playing against a deck that is utilizing that engine. But the thing is, it is quite hard to out. Whereas with Dragoon, like I feel most meta decks will have access to access code Talker, which is a really easy out, or even Boral Sword Dragon. It's quite easy to be able to make a link for and easily just attack over the Dragoons. And then once it's gone, it's gone. It's not really coming back. Whereas with at least the Enforcer, once it dies, it will come back during the next standby. And in worst case, if your opponent is able to out it, next turn you're drawing 2 additional cards for free, which is also really powerful in itself. So yeah, overall, I do think Enforcer is a lot better than Dragoon, mainly because the package is so powerful, and even the monster in itself is quite versatile. And I don't think the negation really makes that much of a difference. I mean, if you are playing Phantom Knights, I would consider, you know, playing the Enforcer over the Dragoon. You don't really need the spell and trap negation, and the spell is really powerful, allowing you to be able to push through hand traps and push through boards going second. So yeah, it's like, imagine, like, you know how broken Prankratops is, like, you know, the fact you can special a 2600 monster, you can attack over a guy and then also use the effect to destroy a card in the field. Like, Prankratops is limited, right? And this guy is like Prankratops that doesn't target and comes back like during the next turn. And I remember, like, if you go back to like 2017, right, we had Zodiac Dryden, and when that card came out, it was the best deck, right? Well, I don't think Zodiac was the best deck, you know, 60 cards was the best deck to me, because Grass was absurd. But Zodiac Dryden was like the monster of that year, you know, and even when it got unbanned, it was still really, really good. Just the fact that, you know, an Xyz has hardly any attacks, so easy to attack over, but the fact that it could just destroy any face-up card, it was so powerful. And now we have Phoenix Enforcer, which is like Zodiac Dryden, like, you know, like the next evolution, you know, like Zodiac Dryden on steroids, you know, like it's really really good. So yeah, I wouldn't really underestimate how good this card is going to be, because I think now we have Burst of Destiny coming out. It is going to be the Enforcer format. Like, it's gonna be the Phoenix Enforcer format. Like, we were all sick of Dragoons. Dragoons was like really toxic to deal with, especially with decks like Subterra or like the Buster Blader deck, where they'll just summon a Dragoon every turn with like loads of like traps and hand traps to protect it, and it was so annoying to deal with. And even in decks like Phantom Knights, where they'll summon Dragoon and it would be hard to out it, or even like you had, I think Nimnim was playing his Tri-Brigade deck with Dragoon inside it, and that was also fairly powerful with the fact that it was able to, you know, use the Tri-Brigade combos and also play Dragoon as well. So like, we were all complaining about how bad this was and how annoying it was to deal with. Like, now it's going to be Enforcer, but I think Enforcer is, it feels a lot more fun, maybe because it's fresh, but the fact that it is powerful, but I don't think it's as like oppressive as Dragoon is. But yeah, it's going to be pretty crazy to see it all unfold. So yeah, hope you guys enjoyed. That was like my little breakdown of the difference between the two, and yeah, hope you guys enjoyed. Leave a comment below what you think. Maybe I missed some points, you can add that in the comments. It'd be cool to have a discussion down there. And yeah, see you guys soon. Take care.